The perception of a sports villain isn't just reserved for athletes and coaches. Here at the AJC, we're counting down 12 sports villains that the city of Atlanta is not fond of. And we're grouping these two ownerships together because they combine to be a big reason why Atlanta has lost not one, but two NHL franchises to Canada. Our number 6 and 7 villains in Atlanta sports history are Nelson Skalbania and the Atlanta Spirit. Joining me here is my editor, Chris Vivlamore. Chris, what makes these two ownership groups the perfect Atlanta sports villains?
Because Atlanta would still have hockey in the NHL if it wasn't for both of them. We tried once and lost it, and then you try again and you lose it again. And there's a passionate fan base here for hockey, and it's gone empty because of ownership.
In both of those instances, what fell apart?
Actually, they had the right motive going into it. I mean, in the Atlanta Flames, the person that bought it was clearly a flipper. He had planned to buy the team and flip it as soon as he could, and he did it in a year and made a lot of money. And then when the Atlanta Spirit bought the Hawks, the Thrashers, and Phillips Arena, they intended to flip the hockey team too. That they wanted to stick with the arena and basketball, but the NHL was coming off a collective bargaining agreement. It seemed like a favorable time to sell the team, and they had nobody to buy them. And so in the end, you end up losing a hockey team when there was another city that was probably more primed to lose a hockey team.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Tell people about that.
So basically, at the time that the Thrashers were sold and moved to Winnipeg, the NHL owned the Phoenix Coyotes. And so if there's a very good ownership that was coming from Winnipeg, lots of money, had an arena, could support the team, even though Winnipeg lost a franchise years earlier, who would be the optimum person to sell that franchise to? You'd think the NHL would unload the team that they're paying and losing money on, but no, they picked the Thrashers in part to get rid of that ownership, and that's an issue. And
you're the perfect person to talk to about this because you did cover the Thrashers for a couple years. From your perspective, what was the most frustrating part for the fan base and the city of Atlanta?
Here's what I'll say. In all honesty, I've covered a lot of events in my life, and the loudest arena I have ever been in was the Thrashers playing the Rangers in the playoffs.
Wow.
They ended up getting swept, but that was absolutely the loudest arena I've ever been into. I've walked down Centennial Olympic Park Boulevard after Marian Hossa had a hat trick to fans in the street chanting his name. So that's the frustrating part, I think, is that it was here. It really could be supported here if it was a good product. But when, in the Thrashers case, when they started dismantling the team, and then they became poor, and then you know how Atlanta works, then the fans don't come, and then you have a reason to move on. So that to me is a frustrating part. It really should work here.
And it's hard to predict, but you think Atlanta could have a successful hockey franchise?
Yeah, the ownership has to be right.
A lot of things have to go right.
Right, and the situation has to be right, but as far as a fan base to support it, I know there's a lot of options. We love our Braves, we love our Falcons, we love our Georgia, we love our Tech, we love our Hawks, we love our Atlanta United. Like, there's a lot of options here, but hockey was one of them, and it was working. And I think that's the frustrating part.
Chris, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks.
Thanks to all of you for watching. Make sure you continue to follow along as the AJC breaks down the top 12 villains in Atlanta sports history.